Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson is out aggressively trying to win millennial progressives. And he's doing it with lies, basically. Adele Stan writes about this over on Alternet. Meet Gary Johnson's Koch network money men. And this is Johnson's plan, as reported by Politico's Ben Birnbaum, is to siphon enough votes from both major party candidates to deprive each of the 260 electoral majority a candidate needs in order to win the White House. Then the race gets thrown into the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, where the third-party candidate expects to win? Really? Birnbaum reports that the Johnson campaign has recently reshuffled its map, focusing on states, quote, with large numbers of disgruntled Sanders voters, end quote, which he identifies as Iowa, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Washington. In addition, Johnson forces are making television and radio ad buys, according to Ad Age, in Nevada, Colorado, New Hampshire, and Maine, all states identified by 538's Harry Enton as more or less must-win states for Clinton, meaning her chances of winning the general election drop precipitously if she loses any of them. And then Adele Stan writes, we do know enough to look at who's behind a couple of pro-Johnson political action committees and the corporate entities whose employees donate the most money directly to the campaign. Jeffrey Yass of Susquehanna Group International, a financial options trading firm, and Chris Rufer, president and founder of the Morningstar Packing Company, an agribiz tomato grower and processor of tomato products. And Johnson's past association with Koch Industries, writes Adele Stan, which benefited from a multi-million-dollar no-bid contract for a New Mexico highway given one of its subsidiaries during Johnson's tenure as governor of that state, has led to speculation he will receive support from political groups in the Koch network. Booking ads for Johnson is Purple PAC, where Yass, this is Jeffrey Yass of Susquehanna Group International, is the largest donor at $1 million. Purple PAC has purchased airtime in Johnson's behalf to the tune of $800,000, according to the FEC. Purple PAC was founded by Ed Crane, former president of the Cato Institute. And I think the Cato Institute used to be the Charles Koch Foundation, although I could be wrong on that. Both Yass and Crane sit on Cato's board of directors, as does David Koch. And Yass's big issue, the privatization of public education, according to Adele Stan in today's Alternet. Last year, she writes, Paul Blumenthal, the Huffington Post's money and politics reporter, undertook an exhaustive review of spending by two nonprofit groups funded by Yass and his partners at Susquehanna, tracing donations from the groups Rosebush Corp. And Green Orchard, Inc. to various groups and PACs that either support the diversion of tax dollars to privately run charter schools or the voucherization of public school funds to be applied to tuition of private and parochial schools. And it goes on. And then, you know, this fascinating piece, this is, well, I don't have the source for this. I'll have to track that down and get back to you on this because, oh, well, here we go. Raymond Sanchez, who is Speaker of New Mexico's, well, a few issues aside, Johnson's politics are toxic, and it's disingenuous for him to suggest that economics can be set aside as a discrete category. After inaugurating New Mexico's use of private prisons, Johnson made it his top political priority to install a school voucher system, an effort that failed because of the Democratic legislature. He also annulled public employees' collective bargaining rights, which, by the way, is something that I understand Donald Trump, Newt Gingrich has advised Donald Trump should be his first priority if he becomes president. Slashed funding for social programs, Gary Johnson did in New Mexico when he was governor, reduced taxes for the wealthy, implemented one of the country's strictest welfare reform programs, and pushed for harsher sentencing laws. As Joseph T. Hartmann reports in his book on the U.S. prison system going up the river, Gary Johnson accepted at least $9,000 in campaign contributions from a prison company that ultimately won a state contract. By the time he left office, New Mexico led the country in for-profit prisons, housing 44% of its inmates in private facilities. Only Alaska at 31% came even close. He rejected minimum wage increases and backed right-to-work bills. And in 1999, when public employee unions' right to collectively bargain was set to expire, Johnson vetoed a bill to extend it. Thanks to Johnson's actions, AFSCME's Carter Bundy told me, 10,000 government workers saw their wages frozen. He was incredibly hostile to labor, said Morty Simon, an attorney who represented labor groups in the 90s. We were just totally shut out of the Gary Johnson administration. No contract, no nothing. In 1995, for instance, he vetoed hundreds of line items, including one that involved children's cancer treatments and another for evaluation of kids who'd been sexually abused. He restored the funding after a backlash. Later that year, when the state's health department faced a budget crunch, his solution was to impose a time limit on benefits for disabled adults, which immediately threw 731 people off the rolls. Gary Johnson is not just a harmless idiot. And in fact, Gary Johnson wrote this op-ed piece for the New York Times about how wonderful he is and how people should vote for him and all that kind of stuff. And what's hysterical, if you read the piece in the New York Times, is you can read the comments, the readers' favorites and the New York Times favorites. Here's a few of them. This is from Thom Quine in Vancouver, Canada. He says, libertarianism is the ideology of hatred of the poor. There is no society and therefore no social problems. There are only Mad Max individuals fighting it out. If you are low income, that's your own fault. If you can't afford medical insurance, you should just die and let the rest of us keep our taxes. Government is bad and everything they do is wrong by definition. Excuse me. The problem with this ideology is that the most livable countries in the world right now have high taxes, lots of government regulation, low poverty, low crime, a strong social safety net, and a general understanding that being a good citizen means you make a contribution to the general health of society, and you're not just in it for your own personal enrichment. Don't fall for libertarian lies. Here's another one. These are from the top 5 or 10 comments posted in the New York Times in rebuttal or in response by readers in response to Gary Johnson saying, hey, vote for me. I admire your zeal, Mr. Johnson, and your arrogance. It's on par with Donald Trump. Nothing you have ever done in your life has prepared you in any way to be the leader of the free world, but you consider yourself capable. And frankly, your ideas horrify me. They are the positions of a 20-year-old frat boy who thinks he's the center of the universe. You got a lot of growing up to do and a lot of understanding to embrace before I would even consider voting for you for the mayor of my small town. Perhaps that's your appeal to youth, complete and utter selfish narcissism. I don't think that millennials are narcissists. I think that they're just misinformed if they're going to vote for Gary Johnson. At the end of the day, the only reason, this is Louis Brennan in Michigan. He posted this in the New York Times page. At the end of the day, the only reason to vote for a third-party candidate, as I did in 2000 to my regret, is to use the vote as a means of personal expression rather than as a civic responsibility. This way of looking at the vote has become distressingly widespread, ignoring what the true purpose of the ballot is. Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to this. If you cannot stomach the thought of Hillary Clinton in the White House, you are morally obligated to do what you can to put Donald Trump there and vice versa. If you don't like either, tough. The only thing standing between Trump and 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now is Hillary Clinton. Trump is the only barrier to Hillary in there. So pick the one you like the least and vote for the other one. It's not about you. It's about what happens to the country over the next 4 years. This is rebuttal to Gary Johnson, of course. Here's another one. In 2011, Johnson stated during a National Press Club interview, the sun is actually going to grow and encompass the earth, right? So global warming is in our future. He then added, we would be building new coal-fired power plants and argued that the money spent to combat climate change would be better spent on other priorities. When asked in 2016 by Bill Maher if he had a comprehensive plan to combat climate change, Johnson said succinctly, no. And now this August, Johnson's campaign announced that he is open to a cap and trade tax for carbon emissions, even while later admitting to a New Hampshire crowd, it's a great theory, but I don't think it can work, and I worked my way through that. How can any reader of the New York Times consider this man anything but Donald Trump with the volume turned down? Brilliant. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Anything Goes Friday. Your call's up next.